All right, welcome everyone. My name is Chris Neidl. I am absolutely pleased to have you all here. I know we'll have some other folks joining as we proceed. If I could just quickly, before I go any further, could either Ramon or Susie just confirm that you can hear me and see my screen?
Confirm both.
Yes.
Excellent, great. Okay, so my name is Chris Neidl. I am one of the co-founders of the OpenAir Collective, and I'm also a consultant to the Four Corners Carbon Coalition. And today I'm really pleased to welcome you all to what will be an application overview for the Four Corners Carbon Coalition's inaugural Catalytic grant campaign, which is focusing on carbon removal and concrete. And we're going to get into the details. So today is really talking about really the nitty gritty of the application process for those of you out there who are interested in potentially applying. It's also for those of you who are just interested in the Four Corners Carbon Coalition. This will be instructive for you. I'll also ask some of my colleagues maybe to post a link to the webinar that we did yesterday for OpenAir, which was more sort of a background on the history of Four Corners, our sort of operating principles. We go into a little bit more in depth on the why of this new coalition, and that might be really useful to you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And what we're going to begin with before I even go through the agenda for today is I would just like to really have a nice welcome message from really the folks that are making this all happen. And these are really the partners that started the coalition and that are coming together to initiate this campaign. So I'm going to actually introduce senior representatives from Boulder County, Colorado, the City of Flagstaff in Arizona, Salt Lake City in Utah, and the City of Sante Fe in New Mexico. And I'm going to go ahead and start and welcome Susie Strife, who is the director of for Boulder County for the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience. So Susie, you want to jump on and say hello?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Awesome to be here and welcome. I think we all know that we are in a serious climate crisis and climate impacts are happening here and now. And that's why it's really imperative that we collaborate on solutions together. And so I think the Four Corners Carbon Coalition really represents the very spirit of strength in numbers, where local governments are banding together and punching above our weight to pool our purchasing power and leveraging our resources to do something with high impact together. So as you'll hear today, the coalition will provide Catalytic funding to accelerate CDR, project deployment, and business development. And so this is all to say welcome, and I'm super grateful for the leadership from my colleagues at OpenAir, Chris, and the cities of Flagstaff, Salt Lake, and Sante Fe. And I'm also really thrilled for the interest that we're seeing from potential applicants to help us realize our goal of spurring regional CDR innovation to fight climate change. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Susie. And now we'll hear from Ramon Alatorre, who is a climate analyst and one of the key architects of the Four Corners Carbon Coalition, representing the city of Flagstaff, Arizona.
Appreciate it, Chris, and thank you, Susie. Really just echoing everything that Susie said. Really excited about this coalition. The additions to add, I suppose, are just the excitement for this being local. This is locally based carbon removal. We want to try to help provide just local imagination and show, kind of put our fingerprints on this clearly emerging sector. I think sometimes folks have a hard time imagining what it could look like and anticipate that it's going to be sort of done by higher powers, but really there's an incredible amount of innovation and opportunity that exists, and being able to have projects that can demonstrate what this looks like so that other communities might be able to replicate is very, very exciting.
Great, thank you so much, Ramon, appreciate it. And now we'll hear, actually I'm going to skip here because I realize I have to turn on Sophia Nicholson's camera. So I'm going to actually go to Sante Fe first, and we're going to hear from Neil Denton, who's the Director of Sustainability for the City of Sante Fe, New Mexico.
Hi, everyone. At the City of Sante Fe, we couldn't be happier to be joining this coalition. As soon as I read about this forming in a newsletter, I reached out to Ramon and wanted to talk about how we could take part. Here in Sante Fe, we have a goal of carbon neutrality by 2040. We've been working on mitigation by investing in solar at our facilities, by working in clean energy financing, running a solarized program, focusing on our green building code. But we recognize the need to focus on drawing down greenhouse gases is immediate and urgent. So we're not interested in just doing the bare minimum. We want to do everything we can to address the climate emergency with the urgency it deserves. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of this coalition and look forward to seeing all the proposals from everyone.
Excellent. So great to have you here, Neil. And last but not least, we'll hear from Sophia Nicholson, who's the Deputy Director of Sustainability for Salt Lake City in Utah.
Hi, everyone. I'm honored to be joining you today. Yes, I work in the Sustainability Department of Salt Lake City, and we have been focusing largely on climate mitigation efforts. So a lot of what we do is partnering with other local municipalities and our investor-owned utility to advance the Community Renewable Energy Program, which is a net 100% clean electricity program for many of the communities in our state. And then all the other things that are traditionally best practices around transportation and building efficiency and electrification and whatnot. But we are very excited to be part of this coalition for, I think, all of the reasons that my other colleagues mentioned: the power of local governments coming together, helping to learn from and shape this field, and seeing how we can make a difference and advance this technologies. So great to be
Thank you so much, Sophia. And I really do want to stress, Boulder County and Flagstaff, Susie and Ramon and their teams are among the first communities in the world, local governments, to really embrace CDR as part of their overall strategies. And we've been working on this for over a year now. But I really want to really thank and commend Salt Lake City and Sante Fe. We began conversations with in recent months about this opportunity, and watching them think this through and enjoying the coalition for the reasons they did is really, really commendable. So I really want to thank Sophia and Neil and their teams in the cities of Sante Fe and Salt Lake City. So we are going to just quickly go over the agenda here. If I can get my camera to move, there we go. And just a tiny bit of housekeeping. This is a recorded session, as you probably saw when you came in. Anybody who RSVP'd to this session is going to get a link to the YouTube video, probably by either tonight or early tomorrow morning. So don't worry about capturing everything. I'll also include a copy of the presentation as well. And it's also going to be listed on our website as well for anybody who wasn't able to make it or didn't RSVP, and it'll be up for the duration of the campaign. So what we want to do today is just give a quick background on the Four Corners Carbon Coalition, our mission, our principles, our process, and then we'll get right into this first campaign that these four local governments are heading up, which is focused on accelerator catalyzing projects in the region that link concrete to carbon dioxide removal. And then we'll go in and we'll talk about what's in the application. It was posted, went live quietly over the weekend, and then officially launched on Monday. Anybody can take a look at the application. We're going to go over what's in there, and then we'll stop after that presentation, and we'll hear from all of you during a Q&A period, and then we'll end right at the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and lead the presentation here to walk us through. And again, we're going to start with just the basic intro of the Four Corners. And as you heard a little bit from all of our partners here, what this is all about, but it's a nonprofit platform that has been created to enable local governments to catalyze new carbon removal projects through collaborative support campaigns. And it's starting here with these four local governments in this region. But the goal is to really expand it wherever there are groups of local governments that want to team together and initiate and catalyze carbon removal in their regions, both in the United States and really ultimately globally. So this is the beginning of something that we hope will have quite a wide footprint. This started, some of you may have tuned into our webinar yesterday, but as I just referenced, it really began from some conversations when Boulder and Flagstaff, who again had similar objectives related to carbon dioxide removal, began a conversation, Susie, Ramon, and their colleagues last summer. And then a lot of thinking through, we realized that there must be a lot of the thousands of local governments in the United States and many more globally who have embraced and formally committed to emissions reduction or net zero targets, we thought that that was really the basis of potentially a really strong coalition of local governments to work together to drive creative, locally rooted carbon dioxide removal. And so that was the beginning of it. And then we really kicked off formally, publicly, with a public announcement last year during the COP27 climate conference in Glasgow. We had a webinar with sort of a statement of principles, what our objectives are. Since that time, we've actually been very fortunate to partner with an excellent 501c3 charity, the Windward Fund, which is acting as our fiscal sponsor. The founding members, as you've heard from all today, started with Boulder and Flagstaff, and then we were incredibly fortunate to have Sante Fe and Salt Lake City join us in recent weeks. And then as technical partners, and you'll hear more about these roles, incredibly fortunate to have one of the premier carbon dioxide removal consultancy firms in the world that advises national governments, Fortune 500 companies, all variety of institutions on creating carbon removal investment and buying strategies. They have an enormous amount of expertise scientifically within their ranks, and they've been involved in the design and execution of Four Corners from a very early stage. And then OpenAir, which I represent. I'm one of the co-founders, and we are a global volunteer-driven action network focused on advancing CDR at the local, national, and global level. And so we are involved as technical partners in this project as well. As we stated, the objective of Four Corners is really to accelerate the market evolution of CDR through direct catalytic support of innovative projects. So this is really about, as many folks who are tied into the CDR world, we're at a phase right now where it's go time. We have to start getting projects out in the world to test them out, demonstrate things that really have scale potential. And we think local governments can play an incredibly important role in that. And that's what Four Corners is based on. And what we are trying to do, there's many different forms from the public sector and private sector that are emerging in recent months and years that aim to support, create early demand for promising carbon dioxide removal solutions. And what we're doing here is we want to offer catalytic grants that help projects happen. So to fill gaps that might be standing in the way of really, really promising CDR solutions from actually being realized. So that's where we come in, is to sort of provide those resources that hopefully can initiate these projects to make them viable. What we are not, just to be clear, this is not a carbon offset program. It's really not focused on, certainly we want to select for projects that have the potential to draw down a lot of carbon once they reach scale. But the focus here is really about catalyzing those first kinds of projects in the region. It's not as much about accounting for how much carbon those individual or groups of projects are going to draw down. We're not seeking to be carbon off takers. We're going to be buying carbon. And it's not, although it bears a family resemblance, and it certainly was inspired by advanced market commitments like which are happening in the private sector with Stripe and the Frontier Fund, it's a bit different from that. It's not exactly an advanced market commitment. It's a catalytic grant program. And the process, which we'll be describing in depth right now, we just opened up the application process. We'll be receiving applications from interested parties over the next 2 months. It just began, again, kicked off yesterday, or was it on Monday? I'm losing track of time. And then applications will be reviewed once that application process ends by a panel that will consist of representatives from each of the partner organizations, OpenAir, and then leading subject experts that are part of the carbon dioxide removal team that have advanced research and academic experience in relevant domains. So now I'm just going to go into explaining exactly what the campaign attempts to do, talk a little bit about eligibility criteria and some key dates and a few other items that are hopefully will be clarifying. So again, what we've chosen to do with this first one and subsequent rounds with different groups under the Four Corners banner, what we do with Four Corners, we identify a theme or a particular focal point rather than just carbon dioxide removal writ large. We try to, as part of our early scoping process, look at where are the real opportunities where we think carbon dioxide removal could really take off or thrive that are relevant to local places or particularly to our region. And after much consideration and due diligence and research, we selected concrete as our focal point, as our theme. So here we're looking for projects that in different diverse ways achieve carbon dioxide removal through an intersection with concrete production, utilization, or even recycling. And what we've done is through the partnership is amassed a catalytic fund of $300,000. And we expect to spend that fund through this process. And in great likelihood, and our hope is that we'll be able to award multiple awards, not just a single award to the top applicants that come in. We're putting a minimum grant amount for request is $20,000, and then the maximum is $200,000. And again, what we're looking at here, some people have read, and there are some types of solutions that maybe have had more media exposure or maybe have gained more familiarity when we talk about carbon removal in concrete. But we want to stress that any type of solution for carbon removal, again, that relates to the production of concrete or the components of concrete's production, or that occur during the lifetime of the concrete product that are involved in its implementation, or importantly, that involve the utilization of waste materials that are produced from concrete or the disposal of concrete at the end of its life. All of that would qualify. And why do we pick concrete? Very, very good reason. It's the most common building material on Earth. It's the second most used material, period, on Earth after water. Globally, we produce, it's not even known precisely how much is produced globally, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 billion tons a year. And as a material, because of the way it's produced and the way that it has to get used, it's locally produced. It's a very distributed industry. We have, just in the United States alone, about 7,000 ready-mix concrete plants. It's used everywhere. It's the foundation of the modern built environment. We have upwards of 500 block producers and paver producers. So it's well distributed and highly localized. And again, as I just alluded, based on our due diligence of emerging companies and established companies, there's many different ways in which CDR can intersect with it. So there's really ripe opportunities for using concrete as a platform for carbon removal. In terms of eligibility, we're thinking broadly about concrete. It's not any specific type of concrete or even application. So here we're talking about ready mix, precast, blocks, pavers, different forms of concrete, which is a very diverse material. It comes and is produced in many different ways, but also novel concretes, different kinds of new and emerging concretes. We will potentially grant to, as long as they are locally approved for specification in the proposed jurisdiction where they're proposing a project. Just to give you a sense, again, we want to hear from you. There's things that are not on this list here, but to give you a sense of the types of CDR linkages we do anticipate receiving applications for. Certainly any type of material or method that is related to finished concrete or any of its main components, such as aggregates or supplementary cementitious materials or SEMs, as well as the cement production process, if there's carbon removal that's involved with that. Again, novel forms of concrete, which we've done of research around. Folks have asked about hempcrete already. Hempcrete would be eligible under this, but there are other really, really exciting technologies, some of them being pioneered right within Colorado in the Four Corners district. So alternative substitutes, as long as they can be legally specified in the areas where they're being proposed. And then the utilization of waste material, which is really a kind of a new area of potentially using, I think it's something like 5% or even higher of all ready-mix concrete that's produced is just wasted. And there's actually certain elements within concrete, waste concrete, such as alkalinity, that can be integrated with agricultural applications to draw down carbon as well. So this is just a survey of the universe of potential opportunities there are for applicants to submit applications for. What is not eligible, we want to be very clear about, is that this has to be a carbon removal project. And so carbon removal implies the removal of carbon from the air. So this means that we're not talking about point source capture. We're not talking about directly capturing emissions at industrial point sources and using that carbon. Whatever one may think of that in terms of its merits or how necessary it is, it just categorically is not the same thing. That is avoided emissions. So projects that involve carbon capture are not part of the scope of this unless they also involve carbon dioxide removal. And the same holds for solutions that just reduce the emissions of concrete without having a CDR component. We all know, anyone on this call can tell you that we're absolutely all for, and many of us are working independently on policy initiatives or projects that do involve just the straight emissions of concrete and cement. Incredibly important, but it's just not part of the scope of this particular Catalytic grant campaign. Project categories too. What do we mean by a project? I think this is important to point out. Projects can be anything that utilizes a material or a process that takes carbon out of the air. So it might be building a building or a structure or something that uses concrete that actually deploys a CDR solution. But it can also be for some amount of gap funding for, let's say, if a facility is being produced that will produce these types of material, that also would be eligible as well. So both deployment and capacity are both eligible categories. In terms of what funds can be used for, we really want the funds to be used for the realization of projects or facilities that can realize projects. So we are not going to be, selecting for just general grants for general operating for staffs that work at companies that are producing this or other overhead costs. Obviously, that can be built into your grants, but there has to be at its core an actual project that this is enabling. And also that holds for any other kind of secondary services like lobbying or professional services, legal services are not eligible for Catalytic grants under this program. Some other implementation requirements. We want to be on the bleeding edge here of carbon dioxide removal's intersection with carbon removal. And we know any watcher of carbon removal or some of the innovation that's happening in the concrete space knows that it's a fast moving space. And there's a lot that are right at the ready for commercialization, but it might take a little bit of time for them to actually be ready to implement. So we do have a 12-month window for grants that the project doesn't have to be initiated until 12 months after the award is accepted, formally accepted. So that gives a bit of a runway or some wiggle room for some of the innovative companies who are getting to that point. So that's important. You do have to demonstrate, though, in the timeline part of the application that there's a really convincing that you will be able to begin at least within that period of time. And then projects do have to be located within the four corner states. So that's Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. And as I'll describe in a second, there'll be favored status or additional scoring for projects that are actually located within the direct vicinity of the partner location. So Boulder County, Salt Lake City, Sante Fe, and Flagstaff, Arizona. So just a bit of a timeline and some key dates that you're going to want to be aware of. This information is also on our website, but just want to go over these. The grant application just kicked off this week, at the beginning of the week. That is available on our website, which I know either Susie or Ramon have dropped in. You can go to the current campaign section, click on Learn More. That gives you all the details about this, but you can scroll down to the top panel, and there's where you can see the grant application. That is a Google form. You can go ahead and fill it out there. What we've also done, though, for those of you who want to just obviously look at the application in full, all of the questions, complete them before filling out the form. If you scroll down a little bit further there under the award eligibility and selection section, we've added what we're calling an applicant worksheet, and that's basically just a PDF with all of the questions. So you can go ahead and download that directly from there, take a look at it, answer it separately, and then when you're ready, go ahead and fill out the application. You will have the opportunity to go back and revise your application if you need to within the period, the 2-month period. But we give you the worksheet to look at so you can think it through using that as a tool. Following that, we're giving a full 2-month period for the application process, but we know that folks are going to have a lot of nitty-gritty questions, even ones that we can't answer necessarily on the call. So we're giving a 2-week time period starting from today that will close on November 1st, where folks can ask questions using a form that's on the website. I'll show you where that is in a second. And then we're going to turn that around really, really quickly. And we're going to post, not attributed, all of the questions that were asked on that Google or on a form that will be posted on our website so that everybody can see the answers to their questions, and folks can also see answers to questions that they didn't ask. And again, if you go to that same page, the campaign page for this, and you scroll down under the campaign overview section, you'll see an applicant inquiries, and that's just a Google form. You can click on that, ask as many questions as you want. Make sure that it pertains, obviously, to the campaign, but please don't be shy when it comes to asking your technical questions. We want to make sure that we answer them. And then finally, not finally, but penultimately, the application period will close on the 19th. So that is 2 months from today. It's going to close at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So you get a good amount of time to think this through and prepare an application. We're not doing an RFI first and then inviting top candidates. We're just doing a single application. We'll review, and then we will award. Just to give you a sense real quick, what will that selection process look like? We're going to get right down to business as soon as that closes. Who's going to be involved in that process? We'll have at least one representative from each of the partner jurisdictions will be leading this off. And we will have, very fortunate, at least 3 technical subject experts coming from the carbon direct community. They're going to be selected based on their expertise in carbon removal and concrete and some of the applications that we talked about. So some of the leading thinkers and practitioners in the world will be looking at and reviewing these applications. And then myself and potentially other members of OpenAir will be involved in a facilitative role. So we have a great representative panel that will be reviewing applications. And then, let me see here, just what we'll give you very thorough scoring breakdowns when we publish the questions on November 3rd that will show you more specifically in a 100-point scenario how scoring criteria will work. But just to give you a sense of what we are looking at, and this kind of really reflects, again, that catalytic kind of market animation goal that we have here. We're going to be scoring for CDR efficacy. How good is it at removing carbon dioxide removal? Innovation and replication scale potential are hugely important because, again, what we're trying to do is surface innovative types of projects that have not happened yet, that maybe are not yet being focused on by the market, that we're trying to initiate here. And we're going to really look at what is the replication and scale potential of these types of projects. If they're just sort of a one-off, highly unique thing, that will obviously score lower than something that we think has real potential footprint, both regionally and globally. So that's a really, really important part. We are going to be looking at, what is the cost per ton and how do we think that might come down? That's really important. It is obviously directly tied to replication and scale potential. We have some questions that are related to life cycle assessment. We want to make sure that whatever we're selecting for here is going to have a net emissions reduction benefit. We are going to look at local benefits. If there are other co-benefits that might come socioeconomically for the environment that can be quantified, we are going to consider those as well. And as I said before, we want to add sort of a bonus score for projects that are located in the immediate vicinity of these 4 communities. Again, doesn't have to be. It could be anywhere within the 4 corners. We think that really opens up opportunities for different kinds of projects. But if you are able to land your projects within the immediate vicinity of the partner jurisdictions, that will be given some preferential treatment. And then we have sort of just a go, no go through our analysis is that if it seems that there's potential harms or burdens that might come from this process or real uncertainties around that, then those will be disqualified. And so there's questions that try to get at that. And I also want to say during our selection process, we're going to move quite quickly over the holiday and into the early part of 2023. We're going to make our selection and we're going to announce to all applicants, both those who are the winners and those who are not being selected, the results by January 10th, Tuesday, which is 3 p.m. We will reserve the right during that time to ask additional follow-up questions to applicants and potentially even schedule interviews with our panels if we think that is going to actually really help us make the right choices for top candidates. But there might not be interviews. It really depends on what the information bears from the applications. Let me just take a sip of water here. So this is going to move pretty quickly, but we think we are giving adequate amount of time here for applicants to really identify project opportunities and submit applications. And then just to quickly go over a review of the application, we're not going to go over all of the questions, but we're going to talk about the types of information. Everybody, again, can look at the application now. It's already posted on the website. And we have that question. So please do give it a look. If things are unclear to you, submit those questions and we will answer them within a 2-week window and post them for everyone. But in terms of the kinds of questions, there's 40 fields. The first 2 are just, your email. And then we ask right up top, what is your funding request? That's just the sort of preliminary questions. And then the sections that you're going to see there's 9 questions on organizational data. So that's just your name, your location, when you were founded, who's your team. You can describe a little bit about your company. Organizations, as you'll see there, they can be a variety of different types of private companies. You can also be cooperatives. You could even be nonprofits. It could be a variety of different types of organizations that could potentially participate in it. So we cover those up front. Then there's the project summary questions. What is your solution? Tell us how it works. So there's a number of questions that pertain to that. Then there's project impact. Here we try to really get some of the analysis around how does this CDR work? What do you expect the CDR, the level of removal to occur? How do you actually know that? And then are there other co-benefits? Are there potential uncertainties or harms? All of those questions are in the project impact section. We have a separate kind of table that allows folks to submit what life cycle analyses that they've actually had done. You don't have to have a third-party LCA done yet if you're not at that stage. But if you do have that, that is very good information for us to have. So there's a series of questions that relate to that. And then we ask questions about project timeline, which is, when do you think you could implement? And as part of that as well, something I didn't mention, which is an exciting element of Four Corners, once we select our projects that we're going to go with, as part of the application, you'll notice in that later section, we ask, is there an opportunity to replicate beyond what you're asking for here? Would it be possible that there could be a second project or a third project within the Four Corners region, given X amount of resources, which could be the same amount of resources that you're asking for the grant, or maybe it's less for some reason. We want you to tell us that because we're going to have a 2-month window after we make selections where we're going to invite more communities in the region once we be able to say, hey, this is what we're working on. These projects can happen, where other local governments can potentially fill in to try to replicate that project. And we're also going to have a crowdfunding component for 2 months through our fiscal sponsor, where individuals, institutions, and philanthropies anywhere in the world that might want to see these types of projects replicated can pitch in. So we're gonna run a campaign there to try to see if we can replicate right off of the bat and get more than one project done. And then the last one gives you another opportunity to offer any feedback or comments that you have as a final question. So that is a run for you. I always speak fast. I'm a New Yorker. I have to apologize for that. When you watch this, you can put it on slow motion if I did speak too fast. But right now, we're going to go ahead and get right into the Q&A, and we're going to allow folks to ask questions. If what you can do, we're not going to do live Q&A. I'm sure folks, I see it already. Don't put them in the chat. I should have said this up front. If you can just enter them in the Q&A panel, and we'll go ahead and try to answer them. If we don't have answers for them, they are noted here, and they will be answered over the next 2 weeks, and they will be published on the website with the other questions that you answer. And before I open up Q&A, though, I just want to ask my colleagues if there's anything that I may have left out in my discussion. If anybody wants to add anything from then, Susie or Ramon or Neil or Sophia.
No, I don't think so. I was active in the chat and had asked people to use the Q&A function. We don't have anything there yet, Chris. We did get one question that came in. I could read it out loud to you. I think it may be one that we're going to need to run by the Carbon Direct team because of their expertise in the concrete space. But I just read it out loud because it may be something that others are interested in. And even if we don't have the ability to answer it verbally here, it's the type of question that we're excited to hear from people, and we will post on by that November 3rd deadline. So I'll read it, Chris, and if you have something to speak to, I can let you do that, or we could just circle back with Carbon Direct. But Laura was asking, will produced cement or concrete products be required to follow existing ASTM standards? For example, precipitated calcium carbonate is not yet allowed in ASTM certified blended cements. Only natural ground calcium carbonate is allowed today. This spec is under consideration for revision, but it hasn't been revised yet.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So what I would say is obviously ASTM standards are hugely significant, and standard specifications for concrete at every level. So it will likely be important, as we said before, for novel forms of concrete that you have to have local approval. What I have seen as a concrete guy over the last few years working at the local and state level, it's possible that you could find a partner or a jurisdiction where if you're able to demonstrate, and we can have this as part of the review process, that it is acceptable. If you can get acceptance in wherever it is that you're trying to actually implement the project, that's good enough for us if it can get stamped locally. So hopefully that answers. But Laura, please do, we can have further discussion around this, and even can kind of, we want to try to be agents for people that want to participate. Again, you have local governments that are representing. We can ask questions like this actually to our colleagues that are in, general services and sort of find out. But it's an excellent question, and we'll try to get some more details for you. So hopefully that was clarifying. I do see some questions have come in here. I see the who would own any IP that would be generated from the project. The IP stays with the project producer. We're not going to be owning any IP. Open sourcing is not, for those of you who are familiar with OpenAir, that's a big thing that we do. That's not a requirement here. While I'm at it, I should also say, in anticipation of this question being answered, there might be questions about carbon credits. We were just talking about this. A lot of these projects are going to be demonstration projects. It's not going to be largely driven by carbon credits, but again, we've elected to allow the carbon credits to be kept with the project developers in case that's a question that anyone was going to ask. But again, back to this point, any IP that is involved is owned and stays with whoever the project lead is. All right, let's take a look here. Good, we got some questions coming in here. I see one from Lydia. If we are producing a material used in the concrete production industry using captured CO2, but do not have a concrete partner yet, is that something the coalition could help us establish, or should we get that in place before applying? Certainly, we would like that to really be advanced by producers, rather by applicants. It is possible that we would have to make this public, though, and available to everyone. We could, within our own backyards, potentially try to do some outreach to alert concrete producers, in particular geographies that are covered here, that this is an opportunity, and allow for some matchmaking. That is something, if we turn something like that up, we could potentially publish that with our questions. But we do hope that our applicants will have those relationships and be able to advance it. But definitely share with them this opportunity. I think that will obviously be helpful if they know that there is potential grant funding for this. Richard Andrews asks, is all work and outputs from successful projects open source for all to implement and replicate? So again, the IP and things like that are not. We do have an open source spirit here where we want to spread the project model. So when these get selected, we really want to, we haven't even talked about this will come later, but we are going to be really championing and really trying to push out to a broader world that these projects are happening, and this is why we chose them. So we hope that the implementation model will be replicated both by the companies that accept it and potentially by others in the sector, but it's not going to require any kind of open source around the actual materials. If there's IP around that, it can remain protected. All right, let me see here. We are a biochar producer. This is from an anonymous tenant, which pulls carbon from the carbon cycle. Love it. A lot of biochar fans here. We are being used as an aggregate today and are looking at how we can replace a percentage of cement. We are working with a California university on this. Does biochar constitute a CDR technology, and would production in Sacramento count? And the answer is yes. Obviously, we're going to want to look at this from a specification point of view. So we need to make sure that it passes muster with wherever you're proposing it. The California production part, that's going to come up in the LCA, piece of this. It's not disqualifying at all, though. If it is something that's produced there and it looks like an amazing solution, we also know that biochar can be produced anywhere. In Ramon and Susie, just the other day, we're talking about liability biomass in these states where we have a whole bunch of feedstocks that we want to be able to use in productive, environmentally friendly ways that also reduce the hazards and liabilities of forest fires and things like that. So if this project can demonstrate the utilization of that, but it's out of state, that's okay, because we presume that it's something that probably could be replicated more locally. So that's a long-winded answer, but what you're proposing there certainly sounds within the scope of our project.
Though I may just add on, I think the actual integration with concrete, we would still be looking at occurring within the Four Corner states, right? Just like, yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be that anyway. I would imagine.
Yeah, just a dedicated California only project.
Yeah.
Like if parts of sort of the whole piece of the project are coming from other places, then that would be something that we would look at.
Yeah, and it just the logistics of trying to get concrete from out of state, ready mix would be impossible and it'd be prohibitive for blocks out of state. But if there's components from out of state that have CDR involved with them, particularly cement, that would be something we'd certainly would be acceptable. And also, I'm not sure, if the asker of the question is also looking at biochars and SCM within concrete, not just within the cement, that could be blended as a substitute for cement. That is prime territory, I think, for eligibility for a project like this. So those are the ones that came through the QA. Let's see if there's anything else that did come in the chat. If you can, it's just way easier for us if it's in the Q&A because it's just easier to follow. But let's take a look here. Great. We do have questions from, involving hemp, as we said. Hemp is not hempcrete. I think it's fair to say is not technically a concrete, but it is a building material that we think has a lot of potential within the region and globally. It certainly can sequester carbon. So we have included that in the scope. And so the point here is that there's loads of data. I would just say whatever data you have, whether it's for hempcrete or anything else that is able to really validate the claims that you're making, you're going to want to include that in your application, links to that, and that will be factored in the CDR efficacy and LCA components of the application. Daryl, well taken about the lag with ASTM. That's why we do hope we can find some, we don't want to compromise in any kind of way on safety or durability, and no civil engineer working at the county or city or state level will do that anyway. So we do think that there is a possibility to realize projects that don't necessarily have ASTM yet. But again, we're not going to go around, the stamp of a civil engineer that's working for a jurisdiction where a project is proposed. That might be all of our questions. I'm always a fan of shorter meetings, but we will wait another moment here. I'm also going to pause and just see if any of my partners here have any final thoughts about the project, anything that they want to share.
No, but I would just like to add my thanks to you, Chris, because it says in here that you're a leading edge visionary, and we couldn't agree more. And we've been so fortunate to have your expertise and just your energy in creating and launching this incredible collaborative. So thank you so much for all that you have done to make this happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's whenever we get on a call here, it's a total love fest because we all complete each other here. It really is a remarkable thing that I want people to really focus on, is that it's so important for local leadership to happen, and it had to start anywhere. And some people would have predicted that it started in some of the places that, are, more notable for climate policy leadership, but it's starting in the Western Four Corners states. And that is enormously awesome. And it's happening because of the people you're looking at on the screen right now. So I want to thank all the partners for this. And again, I really want to stress, ask those questions, because that's going to make our process better. That's why we're front ending it and having a 2-month period. Ask your questions, no matter how nitty gritty is. And it's our job to try to go out and find answers to it.
We do have one more.
Great.
In the
Take a look here. Along with hempcrete, I assume that Woodwill cement production would also be approved product to evaluate a proposal. Sean, if you could do us a favor right now, as part of we did a lot of due diligence on this. I've heard of Woodwell Cement. Send us a question just about that. Give us a little preview of what the nature of the solution and all that, and we'll give it a look. But if it's a form of cement production, it would likely fall into those novel materials. So it sounds promising. All right.
Christopher, I'll just add, thank you for your leadership on this, and also to you, Ramon and Susie. Look forward to seeing the proposals.
Thanks, Neil. Back at you. All right, great. Well, here we go. And so it begins. So we look forward to receiving your questions, then your applications, and then working with some of you to do something historic and awesome in the four corner states. So thanks to everybody for attending. Again, this has been a recorded session. I'm going to get to editing as soon as I possibly can, but expect to see this in your inboxes to all people who RSVP'd by either tonight or tomorrow morning. And again, it's going to be posted on the application part, the campaign page, for anybody who wasn't able to attend. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day, and we'll be in touch.